The reception was loud and warm. Fairy lights hung like stars over the tables. Guests ate and laughed. The DJ played a slow song. Cassandra walked in satin and heels. Her smile was perfect and sharp. She moved to the DJ booth like she owned the night. I watched from the edge of the dance floor. Then she grabbed the microphone. Her voice cut through music. "My mother-in-law? Embarrassing. She shouldn't even be here," she said, loud enough for cousins and the videographer. Laughter bubbled and turned into uneasy chuckles. A cold thing settled in my chest. I felt it break a little and then harden. My palms trembled. I rose and walked toward her. The string lights made a small halo above my head. I asked for the mic. The DJ hesitated. Cassandra scoffed and rolled her eyes. I held up my phone. On the screen was a screenshot of a bank transfer and a voice file. I said, "This is why I am here." I pressed play. Cassandra's recorded voice came out, bragging about taking money from my late husband's account to pay for the wedding. The DJ stopped the track mid-beat. The music died. Champagne froze in midair. Cassandra went white. Tom stood near the crowd. His face unreadable. I wondered if he knew already. Under plastic ivy in the venue's back hall, I held the bank statement like a dare. The paper was thin but heavy with truth. I remembered the first night I saw the withdrawals. They were small at first, then bigger. They were mixed into funeral expenses and hospital bills. Each transfer felt like a fresh bruise on the already raw wound of losing my husband. I replayed the voice file for Tom on my phone. He watched, jaw tight. He flinched and said, "This could be fake." I showed him the bank's fraud alert emails. The timestamps matched Cassandra's overnight messages. He scrolled through them without looking away. One transfer had a label of a charity Cassandra often praised online. That made me sick to my stomach. He tapped his lip and then his thumb hovered over a reply. He told me about a text he swore he would never show me. It was from Cassandra. It read thin and sharp. "If you ruin this, I'll ruin your reputation." The message felt like a hand closing around my throat. Tom's eyes flicked to mine. He tried to hide worry with anger. He said he loved Cassandra and he wanted to protect both of us. I let him talk. Inside I felt a swelling knot. The knot tightened when he told me he found a secret bank account with a large deposit. And the deposit receipt had another name. It was the name of the owner of the wedding venue. The next morning I went to the venue with my evidence stuffed in my bag. My knees felt weak. The owner greeted me with a smooth smile. The back office smelled of dust and old paper. He pulled out a ledger and tried to act casual. I watched his hands. He pointed to entries that all looked neat and normal. Then I showed him the signature on a deposit slip. My late husband's shaky signature looked familiar. I gasped. It was forged. His smile faded. He stopped speaking smoothly. I asked him who had made the deposit. He flipped pages and hesitated. Then he told me about payments made by a business called Bellwether Events. I froze. Bellwether was listed under Cassandra's maiden name when I searched online. The owner's face looked guilty. He admitted someone offered him a tidy sum to speed up the booking. He said they told him to keep invoices off the books. He slid a folded receipt across the desk. The paper smelled faintly of lipstick. I saw Cassandra's mark on the corner. My stomach dropped. I remember the night my boxes disappeared. I felt I was inside a bad story that would not end. I left the office with the receipt in my pocket and a new kind of fear settling in my chest. A neighbor sent me a shaky video file while I was making tea. Her hand trembled as she typed. The video showed a figure hauling boxes out of my garage at midnight months ago. The woman wore a hood bent and quick. I froze the frame until the silhouette matched Cassandra. I watched it 3 times. The metadata showed the file was filmed the same night a strange invoice hit our bank account. That invoice had been marked as funeral expenses. I called the neighbor voice tight. She said the woman paused and looked at the camera. She mouthed thanks and waved. I felt hollow. That night had been the night my husband died in the hospital. I remember laying under fluorescent lights and thinking the world had stopped. Someone had used my weakness to take from me. I felt watched then for months. Things went missing. Heirlooms vanished. I felt small and frightened in my own home. I hired a private investigator recommended by an old friend at the bank. He arrived the next day with a quiet manner and a coat that smelled of tobacco. He promised to follow paper trails and internet traces. He handed me an envelope full of printouts and notes. I found IP addresses and login times. One transfer went to a card linked to a boutique owned by Mrs. Ivers. The name hit me like a punch. The investigator explained who Mrs. Ivers was. She was a woman who smiled for the cameras at charity galas and offered connections to ambitious young women. He said Mrs. Ivers had ties to Cassandra. He told me about transfers moving through untraceable cards and through accounts that looked like charity accounts. He said the boutique used a shell name to hide who actually controlled the money. He urged me to be careful. He also told me Mrs. Ivers was with Cassandra the night the boxes left my garage. The truth felt too tidy and cruel. I replayed the neighbor's video and the memory of someone waving at the camera. My home had been treated like a warehouse. I sifted through old drawers and found a small shoebox with letters. I read one of my husband's notes again. He had written about small joys and simple days. No one else should have touched those letters. The investigator sent camera stills from nearby traffic cameras. He had tracked a white van. The plate was dull in the photo, but his phone had enhanced it. The driver's name matched a courier who often worked for Mrs. Ivers. My hands were shaking when I called Tom. He answered quickly and sounded tired. I told him what the PI found. He was silent. I could hear the fear in him. He promised he would try to protect me. He sounded younger than his age. I worried for him and for us. Tom tried to protect both of us. He showed me a text he had been holding on to for weeks. It was from Cassandra. The text said, "If you don't keep her quiet, I will ruin you." I felt the words like a blow. He told me he thought he could manage everything. He said he found a small secret account with a large deposit. The deposit receipt had the venue owner's name on it. He admitted to me in a low voice that he had been trying to balance both sides. He wanted to believe Cassandra's promises. He thought she would repay every cent. He thought she would make us comfortable. He said he thought he had protected us by signing papers and letting Cassandra handle things. I felt the trust between us crack. He pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a prenuptial clause he had signed. The witness signature looked like my late husband's. My heart dropped. Tom said he had signed because he believed Cassandra. He had hoped for stability. He did not know the signature was forged. I felt a cold rage and a deep sorrow at the same time. My son had been folded into a web I did not understand. I needed to find who forged that signature. We tracked down the notary who had supposedly witnessed the prenup. He was pale when he looked at the document. He said he remembered Tom signing papers, but the witness name did not match his handwriting. Tom and I sat across from him as he dug through his old records. The forger turned out to be a woman who used to work at the law office where my husband kept some documents. Her name was familiar. She held an old grudge against our family. When the PI pressed, she broke. She admitted she had been paid by Mrs. Ivers to copy signatures. She said it was part of making everything move faster. She seemed tired and ashamed. She told us she never met Cassandra in person. Mrs. Ivers gave her envelopes and photographs to match. She said Mrs. Ivers promised Cassandra a sponsorship that would wipe their debts clean. The notary's eyes were full of regret. He apologized to me for not checking more carefully. He said he signed things too quickly in a rush. I felt fury and grief. We had more proof now, but the web seemed to grow. Someone had planned this and used other people's hands to make it happen. I called the PR firm that had supposedly agreed to sponsor Cassandra. I wanted to hear a simple yes or no. Instead, I heard anger. They sent me a contract with a signature dated 2 days before the wedding. The director on the document denied ever signing anything. Their lawyers called it a forgery. The PR firm told me someone had been fabricating contracts to lure young influencers into schemes. They had lost money and trust because of fake promises. I felt both relief and fear. If they had been tricked, others might be too. I found an anonymous Twitter account posting screenshots of Cassandra and Mrs. Ivers celebrating with cash at a cafe. The screenshots were geotagged to the night my boxes vanished. The internet can spread truth fast, but it also twists things. Cassandra launched a counterattack. She posted a tearful live video accusing me of stealing the spotlight and being bitter. Her followers rallied behind her. My name was dragged in a flood of comments. People I had never met said terrible things. I kept quiet and gathered my evidence. I could not let public noise derail the facts. The rehearsal dinner should have been a night of peace. Instead, Cassandra performed. She cried and told stories. People hugged her and believed her. I could not eat. I walked outside to the garden to breathe. I played a voicemail I had saved on my phone for Tom. It was from Cassandra's mother, left on Cassandra's phone. The voice was shaky and small. She confessed she helped stage some scenes of financial desperation to get pity from rich men. Her voice trembled with guilt. She named dates when funds moved. Those dates matched transfers on our bank statement. I heard Tom's breath change. He left the garden and called Cassandra. I could hear him speak through an open window. He asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" Her voice was quick and defensive on the other end. He came back to me with his face drawn and raw. He said the call ended with promises and tears. He looked like someone who had been punched. My son cared deeply for Cassandra even as the proof rose like a tide. I realized our family had been rearranged by someone else's lies. The next morning, Cassandra posted a public apology with a photo and a fake tremor in her voice. Brands leaped to censor questions. Her followers poured sympathy into comments. The public story turned in her favor for a while. Then a friend sent me a photo of Cassandra's medical records. They showed she was not pregnant, though she had posted for months about a miracle baby. I felt sick. A private message arrived from someone who said they sold Cassandra a fake positive test for a fee. The seller wrote she had been paid to help her look vulnerable and in need. The world felt organized around lies. I decided to confront the officiant who had married them. He was a gentleman with a rosary who had wanted to avoid scandal. I asked him if anything seemed rushed at the wedding. He told me Cassandra pushed to sign the license early. She feared an audit that would show strange transfers if the date was later. He admitted he signed without checking IDs because she had slipped him an envelope. Inside was cash and a note. "Make it quick, we can't let her find out." The minister looked ashamed. He said he regretted his haste. I returned to the reception hall under a small pretense. I said I had forgotten a shawl. The DJ pulled me aside. He had been the one to stop the music the night of the reveal. He looked tired and wanted to do right. He told me Cassandra had used the same trick at another wedding. She had charmed people and paid vendors to keep quiet. He gave me a thumb drive he had recorded that night. "You should hear this," he said. The drive had a clip of Cassandra speaking to a vendor and laughing about how easy it was to get what she needed. I sat in my car and listened. In the background of that recording I heard another voice. I froze. The voice was lighter than I had heard it in months. It was Tom's. He was laughing about plans that lined up with the deposits. He spoke about a trip to fix accounts and starting over. The sound of his voice cut deeper than Cassandra's greed. The clip ended with a whispered line. "Don't worry, Mom won't notice." The whisper felt like betrayal. I sat in my car and let the world tilt. I took the thumb drive to Tom and asked him to explain. He unspooled like a worn ribbon. He'd been swept up in Cassandra's promises. She had said she would repay every cent, make life comfortable, and build a future with him. Tom had believed she would keep her word. He said he felt he had to trust her because she loved him. He showed me an envelope with a clause he had signed for the prenup. He had trusted Cassandra when she said it would protect their future. He did not expect forgery. He looked small and frightened. I felt anger for him and with him. He told me he had tried to keep the money movement quiet to avoid hurting our family's name. He wanted to shield me more than to hide anything from me. I realized betrayal had many hands. We pressed the forger again. She gave a name that chilled me, Mrs. Ivers. She said Mrs. Ivers had promised Cassandra sponsorship and clean money. Everything felt planned. Tom's face crumpled as he admitted he allowed himself to be manipulated. He did not know the scale until the thumb drive played. We followed the trail to Mrs. Ivers. She was always at charity galas, smiling under lights. She greeted me with the practiced warmth of a woman who had never been questioned. I asked about the locket I had lost. She tilted her head and laughed it off. I told her about the boxes and the payments. She placed a hand on my arm and tried to be kind in a way that felt cold. The investigator handed me a photo from a cafe. Cassandra and Mrs. Ivers were laughing over a stack of envelopes. A barista from the cafe showed me a register slip with a tip matching one transfer timestamp. He also said Cassandra left a thank you note signed to M. I felt the locket like a hot coal in my pocket. The barista pulled CCTV and it showed Cassandra and Mrs. Ivers with a small locket on the table. I remembered my husband's gift. It had been missing since the night the boxes left. I realized Mrs. Ivers had taken more than money. I decided to confront her at her next gala. The charity gala was glitter and hush. I waited in the wings and felt like a storm about to break. I walked up to Mrs. Ivers in front of donors and chandeliers. I asked her directly about the locket. Her face showed surprise that did not reach her eyes. She made a small joke then tried to slide away. A photographer in the crowd recognized the locket in her clutch. He whispered he had a photo from a past gala showing Mrs. Ivers wearing it. The man offered to sell me the image. Mrs. Ivers tried to buy the photographer's silence. He refused and walked toward me with the print in hand. The photo proved she owned my locket months before it had gone missing. Her smile cracked. Later in the garden she snapped. She called me sentimental and told me this was about lessons for my son. The world moves on without sentiment, she said coldly. Then she added something worse. She said Cassandra had been told my husband left secret accounts for a new life. Her words opened a door I had not wanted to open. She threatened to reveal an old family secret if I went public. I felt the ground tilt under my feet. Mrs. Ivers' threat reopened a wound I had kept boxed away. I pulled out a dusty shoebox and found letters my husband had written before I had known the whole truth. The letters told of a hidden life, an affair, and a plan to protect another life. There were notes about setting up a trust in case of scandal. My hand shook as I read the ledger where he moved some assets to secure that other life. I realized that his secret moves had been used by others to mask crimes. The initials in the margin matched someone I did not want to believe. A man who worked in Tom's boardroom. I felt a cold realization. The betrayal had roots deeper than Cassandra. Tom and I walked into a glass-walled boardroom and confronted Mr. Hale. He was smooth and fed up with my questions. He denied wrongdoing at first. Then an old email chain surfaced. The emails showed him suggesting rerouting payments to cover favors. The dates matched Cassandra's transfers. Tom's face crumpled. Mr. Hale had been a mentor to him. He was the person who had introduced Cassandra to Mrs. Ivers. The web had fingers in many places. We filed complaints and watched the lawyers circle us like vultures. Cassandra struck back with a defamation suit and public videos. Her team sent glossy press packs. The world watched the fight like a sport. Then something unexpected happened. A childhood friend of Cassandra's slid into my messages. She said she wanted to help. She confessed Cassandra had planned the con and that she could testify. I could barely believe it. Meanwhile, Cassandra's lawyers served me a subpoena demanding all my bank statements. They wanted to bury me in legal fees. I felt exhausted and small. One night the DJ called me. He had a plan. He said he could play a recording live to the reception streaming feed. The recording would include Cassandra's voice and more. He wanted to expose the truth and force sponsors to see. We planned carefully. The DJ wired a small speaker into the streaming feed. The plan felt risky. If it worked, the recording would show not only Cassandra but Mrs. Ivers' laughter and emails from Mr. Hale. If it failed, the backlash could ruin me. I knew the risk. I agreed. We set the trap during a public event where sponsors would be watching. The DJ cued the playback. I felt my heart pound in my throat. The recording started. It was a mixture of messages and hidden clips. Cassandra's voice bragged about taking money. There was Mrs. Ivers' cold laugh and an email from Mr. Hale discussing rerouted funds. The recording wove a clear story. People in the crowd shifted in their seats. The live feed went wide and my evidence streamed into living rooms and phones. Then the feed glitched. The screen went black for a long breath. In the dark, someone yelled that Cassandra was calling the police. Fear zipped through the room. The DJ was calm and whispered, "Keep with it." The stream returned and the tape played on. The room gasped. My phone lit up with messages from strangers and old friends. Sponsors who had been quiet began to ask questions. Then police arrived. The event coordinator, frightened, had called them. Officers took statements and left. The viral clip was already out. Hashtags trended. The public turned and watched. Cassandra's followers hesitated. After the clip went viral, the world buzzed. Sponsors pause deals. Cassandra's fans argued online. Then a chauffeur of Mrs. Ivers stepped forward. He wanted immunity and had a story to sell. He told police he had handled envelopes and passed them to Mrs. Ivers. He said he had driven Cassandra and Mrs. Ivers the night my boxes left my garage. He named streets and times. His testimony felt like a key turning. He also told investigators one more name in a hush: Tom. I felt the ground drop. Tom was not the only actor. He had been involved in handling what looked like transfers and access. Tom collapsed under the weight when he heard the chauffeur say his name. He confessed much and broke in small pieces. He admitted he had signed off on one transfer to save me from a mortgage payment. He thought it would be a one-time move. Then, slowly, he let people gaslight him into letting more go under promises of future wealth. He said he had never intended theft. He had been naive and in love. He showed me a folder with bank access codes he had hidden and thought no one would find. He said he wanted to fix this before it was too late. We hurried to the bank with Tom holding the folder like a prayer. We needed to reverse transfers before funds moved out of reach. The bank manager listened with a stern face. He agreed to help but said we needed court papers to freeze some accounts. Time moved like syrup. Tom slid his card into the teller machine to prove his identity. He swiped and then we waited for systems to catch up. The bank called a temporary hold on transfers while investigators worked. Cassandra burst into the bank door a moment later, furious and defiant. She demanded the records and shouted that we had no right to freeze accounts. Security stepped between us. She screamed that she would expose secrets and ruin us all if we dared to stop her. The manager called the police. They held her for questioning. The chauffeur's testimony, Mr. Hale's emails, and the viral clip built a case that would not vanish. Cassandra's sponsors began to drop her. Mrs. Ivers faced inquiries. Mr. Hale's name leaked to the press. The legal world closed in. I felt a strange hollow calm. The storm was loud, but the path forward began to show itself. After Cassandra's arrest interview, things shifted fast. The chauffeur gave a longer statement. He handed over envelopes and receipts he had hidden under his seat for years. He wanted protection and provided the chain of custody. Investigators found the loan receipt with lipstick that matched Cassandra's mark. Mr. Hale resigned a day later. News outlets dug into his email history and found messages implying he had rerouted funds for favors. The PR firm that had been duped provided statements showing forged contracts. The forger, pressed by investigators, signed a confession that named Mrs. Ivers as the one who coordinated the plan. The courtroom moved like a slow machine of truth. Tom sat beside me in court, pale and small. He held my hand and apologized before anyone spoke. He said he had been foolish and in love and had not known the depth of the crime. I felt sorrow for him and anger at the same time. The judge called for a freeze on accounts tied to the transfers. Mr. Hale and Mrs. Ivers faced charges. Cassandra's criminal defense team scrambled. The world had been watching the downfall like a play. I felt guilty for knowing that my husband's papers and the letters I found helped unlock the web. Tom and I worked with the bank's legal team. They helped prepare documents to reclaim funds. The codes Tom had hidden were real keys to accounts that had been frozen in limbo. We moved carefully to trace where the money had gone and to recover stolen assets. The press wanted details and I kept my answers small. My life felt exposed in pieces. People sent messages both cruel and kind. Some called me vindictive. Others called me brave. The court ordered an audit of transfers and a forensic review of the accounts. The chauffeur agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. He told a simple truth in court that made heads turn. He said he had given envelopes to Mrs. Ivers and watched as she passed them to others. He gave names and dates. Tom sat with his head bowed. At last, some of the truth settled into a frame we could see. Reactions rippled. Cassandra's sponsors pulled away. She faced public scrutiny and criminal charges. Mrs. Ivers found donors disappointed and calls from boards. Mr. Hale's clients asked for answers. The long, slow work of returning things began. 3 days after the big reveal, the DJ called me and said he wanted to play the track again. He wanted to mark the end of that night with a small victory, not humiliation. I agreed. The city still whispered about the viral clip. Cassandra had been charged and made bail. The chauffeur's statement had been published. Emails from Mr. Hale were public. Mrs. Ivers faced inquiries and had to step down from boards. Sponsors who had been quiet now apologized. I went to the bank with Tom once more. He sat across from me with the sunlight making him look young and sorry. He put his hand over mine and began to speak. He apologized properly without excuses for the first time. He said he had been ashamed and scared. He handed over everything he had hidden. The bank moved quickly to reverse and return the funds where possible. My heart felt a mix of hollow and relief. The DJ played the song that had stopped the night of the reception one more time. It sounded different now. It was not a sound of revenge but a sound of quiet victory. Cassandra's sponsors dropped her. Mrs. Ivers faced police questions. Mr. Hale resigned and left town to avoid the press. The chauffeur's testimony had opened doors. The forger's confession had tied threads together. Tom and I stood in a quiet hallway at the bank after papers were filed. He looked smaller but honest. He said, "I am sorry truly." He did not hide behind excuses. He told me he had been foolish in love and too proud to ask for help. He said he thought he had protected the family. I listened and let his apology sit in the room like rain. He promised to make restitution and to work to regain trust. We agreed he would speak first to their friends and the clients who had trusted him. I asked for a public apology from Cassandra, so the people she had lied to would hear the truth from her. I wanted more than money. I wanted honesty returned. Tom nodded. He wanted to fix what had been broken. Cassandra entered the bank with fire in her eyes. She demanded the records and screamed at the manager. Security held her for a while. The chauffeur's evidence and the forger's confession had already sealed her fate in many eyes. She had a moment alone where a camera caught her face raw and shaking. The court required her to return funds and to apologize publicly as part of a plea. She released a short video. Her shoulders sagged. She spoke in a voice that was small and shaken. She said she was sorry. She said she had let lies and greed rule her. She apologized to me and to those she had hurt. The apology felt like a bandage on a deep cut. Some people forgave, others stayed angry. Mrs. Ivers faced losing reputation and money. Mr. Hale's company had to restructure. Tom handed bank access codes to the bank staff and watchers to trace and return funds. The DJ's last track played softly in the background as more accounts were restored. The city's whispers changed to talk about redemption and damage control. 3 days later, the headlines had calmed. The viral frenzy slowed. Sponsors had pulled ads and replaced names. I sat with the case file closed in front of me. The folder felt heavy and light at once. Tom sat across in the golden morning light. He held my hand and said he would spend years making this right. He promised restitution and to rebuild trust with honesty. I told him I did not want revenge. I wanted repair. The bank had returned many transfers and froze accounts linked to Mrs. Ivers and Mr. Hale. Cassandra had recorded her apology and returned several stolen items. The locket came back wrapped in tissue. Mrs. Ivers faced inquiries and was removed from charity boards. Mr. Hale resigned. His clients left in droves. The DJ called and said he would play the stop song in his set now as a quiet sign that truth had its own melody. I felt hollow and whole at once. I had been called embarrassing in front of family and strangers. I could have crumbled. Instead I became undeniable. The morning light felt like a clean page.